all devotees have the vision of pursuing that infinite Ishvara. That is why they worship finite or localized forms of Ishvara in the form of deities, such as Ganesha, Saraswati, and so on. So in this shloka, Sri Krishna offers a ray of hope to such devotees. Even if we worship a finite deity with a finite goal, Ishvara will ensure that our finite goals are awarded to us. In doing so, Ishvara will strengthen our faith in that deity. Faith here in the shloka is nothing but Shraddha. There is nothing wrong in asking for something finite. All notions of spirituality, no matter how finite the goal, are equally valid. They have the power to lift us from our egoic center towards the universe. For example, when we ask Saraswati for success in our exams, it is Ishvara who delivers that success through Saraswati. So Goddess Saraswati becomes the channel through which Ishvara works. He is basically running the whole show, as it were. But more important than the delivery of our desire is faith. Ishvara ensures that our faith in Saraswati is strengthened. It is because there will come a time when that faith will be eventually turned towards Ishvara. More about this faith is mentioned in the successive verses. Now Krishna says, I will fulfill such desires and reinforce the devotion and Shraddha of the devotee in the corresponding form of Ishvara, which is nothing but the finite form. But here we have to make an important note. Krishna says, I will fulfill the devotee's desire who is actually doing puja to an Anya Devata or the finite Devata. But Sri Krishna, instead of saying that particular Anya Devata that you're paying homage to will fulfill your desires, your wishes, he says that he will be the one who will fulfill the desires of the devotee who is praying to him, which is nothing but the Ishvara. Now, why does Krishna say so, and what is the significance of this statement? For that, you should remember in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna represents the totality, the infinite, and all the other deities represent the finite. Therefore, the Bhagavad Gita says, don't worry about whether Shiva is finite or infinite. Shiva will not get angry. Not just Shiva, even Krishna represents the finite. Now, since Krishna represents the infinite and all other devatas are finite devatas, all the other devatas will become a part of Krishna because all finite things are part of the infinite. All the finite should be included in the infinite, or if not included in the infinite, that will happen. What will happen? The finite will not be considered as an infinite. And therefore, all the devatas will become part of Krishna. And since all the devatas are a part of Krishna, the worship that you give will be none other than to the Ishvara or Krishna alone. Therefore, to conclude, whatever celestial form a devotee seeks to worship with faith or Shraddha, I study the faith of such a devotee in that form. Thank you.
Thank you, Viksha. You inspire us by your nice communication skills and a good presentation of this verse. We go to the next speaker, and that is Dr. Sanjay.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. So we are now in the Madhyama Shatkam, chapter 7, Jnana Vijnana Yoga, verse number 22. Sataya Shraddhaya Yuktastasya Radhana Mihate Labate Chatata Kaman Mayeva Hitan Hitan. Now, after dealing with the nature of the individual, that's the microcosm in the Prathama Shatkam, Krishna began this chapter saying that he will discuss the nature of the microcosm or Ishvara in detail. Now, Ishvara or the macrocosm is made up of two principles, as he said, the higher nature, Para Prakriti, the consciousness principle, and the lower nature, the matter principle, which he called as Apara Prakriti. Matter is ever changing, undergoing modifications constantly, whereas the consciousness is changeless, eternal principle that supports the matter but not supported by anything. Now here in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna represents the Para Prakriti, the consciousness principle. So the matter principle consists of 3 gunas, and people get deluded by these 3 gunas and they are bound by them. So such people, they never realize the higher nature of God, that's the consciousness principle, and they never come to God. And the Krishna then spoke about the bhakti principle, whereas how there are varieties of bhaktas and whom do they worship and which are the gods they worship. So that's the discussion that we are in now. Now here in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna symbolizes the infinite God, the pure consciousness principle, which is only one without a second, it's a non-dual principle. Now here Krishna says any deity with a particular form or a finite form or a finite God, he calls it as Anya Devataha, and these gods are many. As we see, people, these bhaktas worship gods in the finite form, such as Rama, Krishna, Shiva, Ganapati, Buddha, Jesus, Allah, any of these forms, they are finite gods. These are so many gods, Bhakta can choose whichever he wishes to. Now, is it wrong to worship these finite gods? Because Krishna is propagating his higher nature. Is it wrong? No, not at all. As long as the worshipper, the Bhakta, invokes the infinite consciousness upon the formed principle, the finite God. This is in fact used as a stepping stone in the spiritual evolution, as it is very difficult to conceive the infinite formless God in the beginning. So, but however, one should not get stuck at that, because staying at the formed God or the finite God will keep us in samsara. But that means the likes and dislikes will not vanish, the liberation is not guaranteed, because he always compares that my God is superior, another God is inferior, or if somebody hurts his God, he feels very bad. So he will be in eternal samsara. So the only way to transcend this samsara is to look at the higher principle, that's a consciousness principle, which is the only one without a second. But many people worship gods for material progress, and where they see the God as a means to achieve their material benefits, and he's not the destiny. But there are very few discriminative people who worship God as both means and the destiny. They are the wise people, Krishna says. Whereas there is materialistic people who worship God for their material gains are worshipping these finite form gods, and all of them get their benefits. And who grants them benefit? The previous verse said that the Krishna himself grants them through their respective gods whom they worship. But these people do not recognize that consciousness principle who is doing all this. So in these verses 21 and 22, he says he will grant those wishes through those finite gods. But they have a disadvantage, because materialistic wishes, the benefits will vanish sometime or later. So those disadvantages are described in the subsequent verses. So the meaning of the shloka is, should we go to the meaning? Yuktaha, endowed with, taya shraddhaya, with that faith, sa iyate, he engages in aradhana tasya, the worship of that form, tataha, and from that, labhate, he attains, tan kaman, all those desires, he vihitan, which are indeed granted, mayeva, by me alone. Endowed with that faith, he engages in the worship of that form God, and from that, he attains all those desires which are indeed granted by me alone. To sum up, using God for material progress or benefit is the lowest form of devotion, which will not lead to liberation. Use God to achieve something higher in life, that is liberation, the ultimate goal one. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjay. It was a very clear and a nice presentation. We go to the next speaker, verse 23. It will be Chetana.
Thank you. Antavattu phalam tesham tad bhavati alpamedhasham devan devayajo yanti mad bhakta yanti mam api. So up to now, we have got the positive points listed by Krishna for Sakama Bhakti. Now Krishna is giving the negative aspects of Sakama Bhakti. It's like the advertisements of cigarettes. One has taken up cigarette smoking, he's become addicted, And now we are being made aware of the statutory warning on the cigarette packet saying that cigarette smoking is injurious to health. Krishna is doing exactly that over here. He says, Sakama Bhakti is wonderful, enjoyable, and you can fulfill your sense and materialistic desires. But there is a very big but. There is a statutory warning. And what is that? He says every materialistic gain that you get through Sakama Bhakti is finite and has got three main intrinsic doshas or defects. And they are Dukkha Mishritatvam, Atripti Karatvam, and Bandhaka Tattvam. And what is Dukkha Mishritatvam? It means all the worldly accomplishments are mixed with equal amount of pain. And how is that? First, we get our accomplishments and acquisitions involves a lot of struggle, anxiety, tension. Once you have acquired it, then we have the problem of retaining it. So yoga is followed by kshema. Finally, whatever you've done to acquire and retain it, one day you're going to lose it. As material benefits are all finite, and anything finite has to have an end also. The pain of this loss is directly proportional to the pleasure we derived from it. Krishna says in the 5th chapter, Yehi samsparsha bhoga dukha yonaya evate. Every worldly pleasure is a potential pain. Second defect is atripti karatvam. That means since every accomplishment is finite in nature, we are never satisfied. We are always thinking of the next higher possibility or comparing ourselves with others and not being satisfied with what we have. This leads to jealousy and inferiority complex. In Kathopanishad, Nachiketa states, Vittena na tarpanyo manushyaha. No human being will be satisfied with any amount of wealth. And the third defect mentioned is bandhakatvam. It means we get addicted or bound to whatever accomplishments we have, like name, fame, status, attention, etc. Having enjoyed those things, I get addicted to them, and without them, I cannot imagine a happy life. Therefore, since all these accomplished are finite, it keeps me in a finite level, and so I continue to be apurnam. Krishna wants to say that in Sakama Bhakti, there is material progress, but we will remain in samsara and apurnatvam. Materially, he will progress, but for a Sakama Bhakta, there is a spiritual stagnation. There is no fall, but there is no spiritual progress also, which means samsara will continue. This is what Krishna wants to say here. He says, Tesham, these Sakama Bhaktas are Alpamedasham. They are unintelligent or indiscriminate people. Why does he say so? Because through the very same worship, they could have sought the infinite moksha instead of asking for a finite benefit. He says, Alpamedasham. They have chosen the wrong destination. Instead of Shreyas, they have chosen Preyas Marga. Such people will get whatever they ask for in the form of money, fame, position, etc. But what is the tragedy here? Krishna says, Antavat Tat means that it is all finite in nature. He further says, Devan Deva Yajo Yanti. Worshippers of finite devatas will get finite results. That is, Sakama Bhakti will get only finite result. Here Deva represents Saguna Ishvara. Then he further says, Mat Bhaktas, my devotees who are worshippers of me, the infinite, who represent Nishkama Bhaktas, the intelligent ones having Viveka and all the sadhana chatusthaya sampatti, those devotees, Mam Api Yanti, they come to me, they attain moksha, they attain purnatvam, they attain Jivan Mukti. Therefore, the message for us is to shift from finite to infinite, from Sakama Bhakti to Nishkama Bhakti. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Clear explanation and perfect timing. We go to the next speaker, Dr. Ahalya, working on the same theme. Whom should we worship, the finite God or the infinite God? Ahalya, it's your time.
Yes, sir. Namaste. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. The statutory warning that Chaitanya said becomes a complaint in the 24th verse here. Alpamedasa, the little-minded who seek finite results, and when he says Madbhaktam Mamapi Yanti, they could have instead sought me. And as she's very rightly said, the effort is the same. Why is there no spiritual progress? Why do we generally fail to get him or reach the self? For which he says, Avyaktam vyaktimapannam manyante mama buddhayah param bhavam ajananto mamapyayam. Not knowing my higher nature as the supreme self, the ignorant think that I have just now come into manifestation, having been unmanifest hitherto. So, I am the ever luminous Lord. Krishna says Brahma or God has two aspects, the Paraprakriti, which was highlighted in the 22nd verse, Paraprakriti, the Chetana Swarupa or consciousness, and Aparaprakriti, Jada or Achetana Amsha. Apara is the lower nature and Para is the higher nature. Some ignorant people see only the lower or the inferior nature of God and mistake the physical body to be the real God, the material bodily aspect of God. Those who know only this Swarupa are ignorant people. They are Abuddhayaha, the unintelligent, Avivekinaha, as the Bhashya calls them, as they have a misconception. And the misconception is about Mam, that is me. Nitya Prasiddha Ishwaram Api Santam. Me, the ever present Lord, they have a misconception. As what? As Avyaktam Vyaktimapannam. They think that Lord is Avyakta, Aprakashaka. However, Vyakti Apannam. They think Prakasham Gatam Idanim Manyante. He has disappeared and again has appeared now. The unintelligent talk about the appearance and disappearance of God, which corresponds to Prakriti and the physical plane alone. Swamiji talks about the TV shows and the mythological movies where a God comes and goes here. And why do we have a misconception at all? Ajanantaha, avivekinaha. Because we do not know the higher nature of God, that which is not physical, which is not the mental, which is not of the Panchabhautik origin, where there is no Janma and Laya. We do not know, we only know this kind, we do not know the Param Bhavam, Paramatma Swarupam, the Swayam Prakasha Rupam, Nitya Prakasha Rupam, Anavrita Chaitanya Rupam. That consciousness can never be covered and that it is evident all the time, that which is all pervading. The Abuddhayaha. Such Abuddhayaha do not know this Param Bhavam, the Satchidananda Swarupa or Satya Jnana Anantam Brahma. And what is the glory of that nature of the Satya Jnana Ananta? It is Avyayam, immutable, Vyayarahitam, ever changeless, Nirvikaram, Paraprakriti. Whereas the Apara Prakriti undergoes modification, a reality of lower order like Krishna's body. Anuttamam Niratishayam, unsurpassable, the highest. So, Sakama Bhakta holds on to the Apara Prakriti, the lower form of Bhakti, whereas Nishkama Bhakta alone knows the superiority of higher order. So there was a lot of questions in my mind as I was going through this. We all identify so much with the Avatara, the Swarupa, Rama, Krishna, Narasimha. We know that the worship is for Jnana Yogyata Prapti. But why does Krishna call in such strong terms Avivekinaha, Abuddhayaha so many times? The answer I thought was some of us study for degree and some of us for knowledge. Similarly, bhaktas of the Arti, Jignasu and Artharti ask for smaller finite results, and a Jnani whom Krishna says, Jnani to Atmaiva me matam, is my own self, surrenders completely. Madbhaktam yanti mamapi and attains me. He says effort for both are the same. However, desires, attachment and attraction of the Jagat do not allow the surrender to most of us. Only Jnanava Prapadyate, the Jnani, one in whom there is no avidya, can surrender, Nishkama Bhakta. Therefore, such strong words to wake us up, he keeps using the word the Aviveki. Krishna in this shloka is talking from the Avatara Swarupa and not in the Ishvara Swarupa, because people like Duryodhana did not recognize him. Even Arjuna, for that matter, surrenders only after seeing the Virat Swarupa. Until then, Arjuna also sees him as a friend, a mentor. So long as we take God as a means for an end, we are in the Sakama Swarupa. And when he becomes the means and the end, it is the Nishkama Bhakta Lakshana. Like Tumhi Meri Manzil, Tumhi Meri Puja. That is when Bhagavad Gita can become an Anubhava Shastra from a Shraddha Shastra, faith to experience. So another 30 seconds. The study of Mimamsa actually is based on the Shadlinga, the Upakrama, the beginning, Upasamhara, the end, Abhyanta, the cycle, Apurvata or Mahatvam, the speciality in it, Arthavada, Udaharana or explanation, Phala or Upapatti, the reason. And when we have a verse like this, the 24th verse, we have to take the Mahatatparya, the profound import of the verse, and not just by the words alone. Harihi Om. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ahalya. A very clear explanation. You also gifted with a very clear voice and enunciation. So your presentation was very clear for all of us. You also raised a very important question, which Krishna actually answers this in the 12th chapter, where Arjuna asks, should I worship the form or should I worship you in the formless? In Vedanta and in our Shastra, as you went through Mimamsa, there is a Nyaya called Nahi Ninda Nyaya. Nahi Ninda Nyaya is when Krishna is trying to focus our attention on his higher form. He tends to criticize the lower form. Probably you got a verse where he is criticizing the lower form. That is why he uses such strong words, abuddhaya and all that, for something which he accepts later on. We can have a discussion on later on. We'll go to the next speaker. Sudha, it is your time, Sudha.
Hari Om, Doctor. Am I audible?
Very clear. Go ahead.
Yes. See, in the previous verse, Krishna said, the consciousness is his higher nature and the physical body is his lower nature. Now, Arjuna has a doubt too. If consciousness is ever evident, how come people miss that? So the answer is given in this particular verse. Let us look into the verse now. Naham prakasha sarvasya yogamaya samavritaha modhoyam nabhijanati loko mamachamavyayam. The simple meaning goes like this. Veiled by my yogamaya, I am not evident to all. Being deluded, this world does not know me, who is birthless and deathless. Here there are two words. Yogamaya is the key word. Yogamaya refers to Apara Prakriti. And when Krishna says, people do not know me, that me refers to Para Prakriti, which doesn't have any birth and death. Now, let us see what is this Yogamaya. When Krishna says, because of this Yogamaya, yoga here means a combination of three gunas, which is called Maya. So Yogamaya means Trigunatmika Maya, which belongs to Apara Prakriti. Here, Krishna says, it's my own Yogamaya, which are in the form of body, mind, and the world. So we have to note this here. Here, Trigunatmika is body, mind, and the world. And this Maya is very, very tempting. As so far we have seen even in other previous stanzas also, majority of devotees run after the lower nature, that is the physical body. They would like to picturize Lord Krishna with a peacock feather, flute in his hand, and his beautiful eyes, etc. As it is described in Adharam Madhuram, Vadanam Madhuram, Nayanam Madhuram, Hasitam Madhuram, Madhuradhipate, Akhilam Madhuram. So, this physical form is always very attractive. That's the nature of Apara Prakriti. So what happens when we get attracted by this physical form? We get deluded. What do you mean by deluded? That is, the thinking power is clouded. That is, Samavritaha. So when the thinking power is clouded, what happens? Aham na sarvasya prakashaha. My higher nature is not evident because of this extrovertedness, because of this delusion. And modaha na abhijanati. They, being deluded, this Saguna Ishvara, they are interested only in Saguna Ishvara and not the formless Nirguna Ishvara. So here, one does not recognize the fact that the very source of fullness is in his own body. So how to make them recognize this? Swami Paramarthananda gives a wonderful example of a water diviner. So whenever we want to have a borewell, we want to have a water in our premises, we call a water diviner. And he sees that in a particular spot, there the water is found. So when we dig there, we get the water. Similarly, The water diviner here is the Guru. Guru, like a water diviner, helps the seeker and points out that whatever you are seeking is underneath you. That is, we have to go to a Guru and the Guru helps us. And how does the digging takes place? So digging of the borewell is by Shravana Manana Nididhyasanam. So this is what, one, we have to go to the Guru and then we will be helped, supported by the Guru. But what happens, being tempted by the materialism, this person finds no time to go to the Guru and pursue. And he's always happy with his extrovertedness with the physical form. And disowning what he has, he runs after the same thing externally. So this is what is being said in this particular shloka. Krishna says that the cause is Yogamaya and we are not going beyond that. Even this problem, the solution is given that Guru is the one who is, we are not able to go to that. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Sudhavani. Clear explanation, and this time no technical issues. We could hear you very clearly. Nice chanting, nice explanation.
Thank you, Doctor.
We go to the next speaker, Nilima. It's
Yes,
your
sir.
time.
Yes, sir. 26th verse. Vedaham samatitani vartamanani charjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu vedana kaschana. Arjuna, samatitani cha vartamanani cha bhutani aham veda. Tu mam kaschana na veda. O Arjuna, I know the past, present, and the future of all the beings, but no one knows me. Here, the self is that one knowledge, the same consciousness principle in all the bosoms. It illuminates everything of the past experiences and it continues to illuminate even the present right now, and it continues to illuminate in the future. For example, like a sun illuminates the past and it is illuminating now, and it will continue to illuminate in the future. In the same way, the consciousness in me illuminating my experiences and the same consciousness in others illuminating their experiences. Like the arrangements of furniture and the furniture pieces in my drawing room are totally different from the arrangements of the furniture in other people's drawing rooms, but the one sun illumines alike both my drawing room and others' drawing rooms with their own arrangements. We can say the sun is the seer, knower of everything. In the same way, in my bosom, my physical, emotional, intellectual experiences are shining out in the light of my consciousness. This consciousness itself is a consciousness in every living being. Naturally, he is the one who has been knowing everything that is happening everywhere. That is why he is called omniscient. No thought can come in one's bosom without a consciousness illuminating it. Or even the individual will not be aware of the single thought. Samati Tane means all our past experiences were experienced because one is conscious of it. Vartamanani, whatever happening right now in the whole universe, it's all shining only by his light. The sun knows what happened in the past, everything happening now everywhere. Bhavishyanicha, whatever happens in the future, how are people are going to know? Only when they are conscious of it. It is the same consciousness in future also going to know everything that is going to happen. Everything in the past, sun has illuminated. Present, it is illuminating everything, and the same sun illuminates future also. Thus, consciousness knows everything that has happened in the past, and it knows everything happening today, and it knows everything which is going to happen in the future. But the ego which is working through the BMI, it can only know the world of objects, emotions, and thoughts. Ego cannot see the consciousness behind its existence. For example, a torchlight illumines all the objects in the dark room, but it cannot illuminate the batteries, the very source. In the same way, for example, a person who is seeing the distant objects through telescope, the the same telescope can never survey the gazer. Everything is known by consciousness, but nobody can know the consciousness because it is a very substratum for all the knowing faculties. Therefore, to conclude, self knows the past, present, and the future of all beings, but no one knows the self. Thank you.
Thank you, Nilima. A very clear presentation of a Vedantic verse. And Krishna says that I know everything. I know all beings. I know the past, present, and future, especially at a time when we are going through what is called a samashti prarabdha. Not only, the whole world is going through medical and financial and other uncertainty. A verse like this is reassuring that there is someone who knows the past, present, and future. And as well said, all will be well, and this shall also pass. With that, I go to the Dr. Prasanna, verse 27. Your time starts.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Ichcha dvesha samuttena dvandva mohena bharata sarva bhutani sammoham sarge yanti parantapa. Pada Parichaya. Ichcha is desire, dvesha aversion or hatredness, samuttena caused by or arising from, dvandva is of duality, pairs of opposite, mohena from the illusion or delusion. Bharata is Arjuna. Sarva bhutani, all beings, here refer to Jiva. Sammoham, get deluded. Sarge, since birth. Yanti, enter. Parantapa, Arjuna, conqueror of enemies. O Arjuna, due to the delusion of duality caused by desire and hatred, all beings get deluded at the time of birth itself, O Arjuna. Lord Krishna in the earlier verses has already revealed the fact that he has two aspects to his nature. One is a Paraprakriti, which is of Chetana principle, or it is of higher nature. The second one is Aparaprakriti, which is of Achetana principle and therefore of lower nature. Wise man knows the difference and seeks Paraprakriti. In verse 25, Sudharani explained beautifully as to how this is veiled by Yoga Maya. In verse 27, this also deals with the root of ignorance or the obstacle to realizing Paraprakriti. Now moving to the verse, Sarva Bhutani, all beings. Here it's Jiva, and therefore it is not just referring to the body's Janma, it is referring to Janma of Jiva. Jiva has been affected by the ignorance right from the birth and therefore has missed the infinite God who is residing in himself. As a result, we become extrovert and tend to seek security, peace, and happiness from the outside world. For example, Swamiji Param describes as a baby seeking happiness from toys and later on from video games and so on and so forth. In the earlier verse, Lord Krishna described, I am lokaha moodaha. That is, the whole world is deluded by the attractive matter and misses the consciousness. Na abhijanati. He doesn't even recognize the fact that the very source of fullness is in his own body. The delusion is caused by raga and dvesha. When mind is subject to the passions of desire and aversion, then the mind cannot even gain the knowledge of things as they are, even of the external world. And it is no surprise that intellect overpowered by passion cannot gain self-knowledge. Swamiji explains that one deluded by duality engages in pravrutti and nivrutti activities. Pravrutti is one that gives happiness and therefore needs to be acquired, whereas Nivrutti is trying to avoid things of aversion. This is samsara, and the cycle continues. So a person immersed in samsara has no time for self-inquiry. One has to accept the duality and realize the fact that the cause of happiness and sorrow both are centered on me. So self-knowledge is the cause of happiness and self-ignorance is the cause of sorrow. Once we realize this, then the Jignasa Bhakti begins. The next verse will talk about the blessed ones who are not affected by this ignorance. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Prasanna, for another nice verse. Sounds like Upanishadic verse itself. All our teachers say that we are born with a certain capital. And you know what is the capital? That is, we are born with ignorance. That is why we need to get knowledge during our life. And this verse says we are born with delusion. There is a certain Arabic story, and I want you to see if it is true in your own life. It said that when every being is born into the world, God whispers into your ears, and he says, you know what, I love you the most. And when things don't happen well to you, you'll say, oh God, what's wrong with you? You told me you love me the worst, but you're helping others. Think of this story. This is what develops a very strong ego, and then we get deluded. Anyway.
Okay, with a very profound Gurubhyo Namaha. Esham tva jananam antagatam papam punya karmanam te dvandva moha nirmukta bhajante mam dhrit vrataha. After the brainstorming sessions for the last 3 days about chapter 7, being the last speaker of the day and of the penultimate shloka of the chapter is like the last batsman before the dinner break of the 2020 match, when the crowd is moving out of the stadium or out of our group. Well, having seen all the top batsmen, I have really nothing much to add. However, so it is just worth a quick review before analyzing the shloka, which is at the culmination. Any great scripture delivers the saransh or the take-home message in the final portion. So also here, chapter 7, at first we call it as Gnana Vijnana Yoga. Gnana, the knowledge of Nirguna Brahma, and Vijnana, knowledge of manifest divinity. Or a final division would be unmanifest divinity, immanent or inherent divinity, and manifest divinity. The first Shadka in Gita essentially drives home the point that one is not the body, but the Atma or self, which is the same as Brahman, the cosmic divinity. In short, the first 6 chapters revolve around thou aspect of that thou art. The 7th chapter is about that aspect, namely God. Now, Krishna opens this chapter in the very first shloka, and he is very emphatic, asking Arjuna to focus entirely on him, pointing out that God operates as manifest and unmanifest. All beings are a combination of matter and spirit, which Kandan elaborated in Shloka 14. Like a thread that connects a string of pearls in Shloka 7, Mattaha Parataram Anyat Asti Mai Sarvamidam Protam Sutre Maniganaha. And all the 8 components of the universe are of Krishna's energy and a manifestation of himself, as in Shloka 4 and 5, and Shloka 4 and 5. And then Arjuna has a genuine doubt when Krishna expresses all this. Well, if so, Krishna, what about the bad gunas? Are you a harbor of that also? To which Krishna replies, the evil gunas are a misuse of the divine energy. Divinity is present in only the energy part and not in the action part, because Krishna is above all actions. He is not dependent, nor bound, nor tainted by them. Sukanya's doubt of yesterday partially answered in this shloka. In the subsequent shlokas, Krishna switches to devotion entirely, identifying the types of people who worship God. So in shloka 16, 17, 18, which Pallavi and Vidya presented, Krishna quotes, I consider them the highest who worship me with knowledge and are steadfastly, exclusively devoted to me. Is Krishna partial to the elite devotees? No, not at all. On the contrary, in Shloka 22, He says, one may worship a celestial god and obtain the objects of desire, but in reality, Krishna alone arranges these benefits, which Sanjay elaborated extensively. But the next sloka 23, there is a caveat which Chaitanya presented. The fruit gained by this worship is perishable, and they reach only the celestial abode, while the Krishna's devotees reach Krishna himself. Arjuna asks, well, Krishna, if it is all that simple, why are people not flocking to Krishna? After all, you are the God who has come in the human form. Then Krishna replies smilingly in Shloka 25, I am wheeled by my divine Yogamaya energy, so those without knowledge cannot understand the imperishable, the birthless, the deathless form. And in Shloka 27, Prasanna took up just before my Shloka, he pointed out the delusion qualities of such people. With this preamble, which has been rather long at the end of a long day, who is it that can escape from the Maya trap? The key words on the Shloka 28, Esham Antagatam Papam Jananam, who has completely destroyed Antagatam, the sins, the Papam, Punya Karmanam, men of virtuous deeds, Dvandva Moha Nirmukta, the dualities, the delusion of Moha has been nirmukta, that is, they are free from. Bhajante Mam Trida Vrataha, worship me with determination. Only when the iron is cleaned off the rust, it responds to the magnetization. So also the jiva about the papas, only when they are completely, neatly erased. Also, once they have got rid of the dvandva of victory, defeat, gain, loss, life, death, which should not ruffle him and affect him, that he becomes steadfast in his vows. Worship of the Lord is possible to such a dedicated soul only. In the next chapter, Akshara Brahma Yoga, Krishna answers Arjuna's questions, 7 in all, about Brahma, Adhyatma, and Karma. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Jagdish. Very nice summary of the 7th chapter, or the last part of the 7th chapter. And with your verse, actually, Krishna has completed Jnana Vijnana Yoga. We have 2 more verses in this chapter, which we'll be dealing on Monday, which is Krishna's strategy. What Krishna does is he introduces certain terms which Arjuna will be wondering what they are all. And so we have to begin another 8th chapter with Krishna's question as to what are these terms, and that is how the 8th chapter begins. With that, I will formally conclude today's class. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.